Hello everyone and welcome to the Grumpy Surfer podcast. I am the Grumpy Surfer and your host, Ads Lyson. Before we get started, Ombi are our sponsor, so if you want to get involved with the best surfing technique program on the internet, go to ombe.co/ref/grumpy surfer to get 10% off your programs on the Ombi Surf website and have a look at some of their programs. The 12-week program is their main program that they're running at the moment, and it's absolutely amazing. It's helped my surfing out, my technique, the way that I look at waves. Absolutely amazing. And they've got some really cool stuff in there like cardboard surfer, surf skates, anything you can think of that involves surfing. Clayton and Ant and their team have covered. Pretty special. Okay, today on the podcast, I have a pretty exciting guest. She was a US Coast Guard and a former CIA intelligence officer, and is a surfer. And she has just written a book, which is pretty special as well, and you can get on Amazon, and it will be in the links and in the blogs on the relevant podcasts that you listen to this to at the bottom. So just have a little click of that, and it will take you directly to her book. So please enjoy my conversation with an amazing woman, Caroline Walsh. Caroline Walsh, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
3 questions before we start. How are you? Where are you? And what have you been doing today?
All right. I am good. Good enough. And I'm in San Diego. I'm at the University of San Diego. And my day's been nice. I work at the university at the Military and Veterans Center and just have had some good conversations with students today. And yeah, it's just been a good day.
What do you do at the Veterans Center?
So I'm the assistant director of our military and veterans program. So we put on like graduation, just different programming for veteran students throughout the year, since it can be kind of isolating being a veteran on campus with a lot of younger folks.
What sort of programs do you run at the Veterans Center?
We do like career mixers where we bring in people from the community. We do like a big Veterans Day, and the US Our Veterans Day is in November, so we do a big ceremony for that to like bring awareness of the veteran population to other people on campus. And we do a big graduation at the end of the year for military connected students.
That's pretty cool, because we don't really have something like that over here. I'm coming to the end of my service at the moment. I've just done 22 years, and I leave in May basically. We do have the British Forces Veterans Society. There's probably about 3 or 4 different veteran societies, but I don't think there's anything specifically set up that has a particular program like you guys do, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's nice. I think every school here is a little different, but where I'm at, University of San Diego is really trying to grow the Veteran Center because they know it's important to help veterans connect with each other as they navigate campus after, some people are coming in to school to do their undergrad after 22 years. So just trying to give them a community on campus. So yeah, they do a good job here.
What sort of things do you see veterans coming in to do at the university? What sort of courses do they sign up to? What are the most popular ones?
I'd say we have a lot of students in the engineering program. A lot of engineering program. I'd say a couple like biology. We have definitely a variety, but I'd say engineering and business are probably our biggest ones, as far as the people who come into the center and talk about, what they're doing.
I think a lot of the guys that leave the military, we do have some form of like pathway to leave. It's through a career transition partnership. But it's like a civilian company that is kind of contracted into the military, where they decide what courses, and it's kind of like a list of courses that are on there, and we get like a certain amount of money to be able to fund that through. But anything that isn't on that list, you can't really do, and it's very much more like tradesman sort of things, like a bricklayer, an electrician, a plumber. Health and safety is quite a big thing as well. So they do like a lot of health and safety courses, and when I looked at those courses, I was like, it didn't really appeal to me that much. I'm mega into my surfing and my jiu-jitsu, and it was kind of like, I really don't want to do that. I can't see myself sitting underneath a kitchen sink, for the next 15, 20 years, pulling other people's crap out of the sink. It didn't really it didn't really appeal to me that much.
Yeah, it's definitely tough. I guess we're lucky here that some of our benefits are really open. You can really figure out if you can go to school, you can learn to fly a plane, you can get an art degree. So sometimes it's hard for people to decide what to do.
I like to fly a plane. I wish I had that opportunity.
Pilot's license, yeah.
So one of the reasons why I asked you onto the podcast was Ash from the Blue Pigment podcast said that you'd be a good person to talk to, because the combination of what I talk about on the podcast is pretty cool. And you initially signed up, you were in the Coast Guard, and you were in the CIA within the intelligence community, re-signed back up to the Coast Guard. And you've also written a book as well, which is pretty cool. Can you talk a little bit about how you came to join the Coast Guard?
Sure. So that's actually a surfing story.
We love surfing stories here.
Right? This is the right place for that. So I was going to school in California, in Ventura, and my two friends, the three of us, we all went surfing and played soccer. That was like, we did school on Fridays, we surfed in the morning, we played soccer, and then we'd surf at sunset. So they went surfing once, and I think I was working, and they came to my job after, and they're just like, hey, we ran into a Coast Guard recruiter in the water. We're joining the Coast Guard. And I was like, what is the Coast Guard? What are you talking about? And they're like, yeah, you do 20 years, you live by the beach, and then you retire. So we're doing it. And I was like, okay, like, let me think about this. So I ended up going and talking to the recruiter, and he took me surfing at Point Magoo, which there's one break you can only get to if you have the military card. So he took me on the exclusive military surf break, and just talked up the Coast Guard, and I did a lot of thinking, and I figured out, I was doing a degree in psychology, and I was like, well, doing intel would be really cool. And the economy had just tanked. It was like 2009, so it was also like, it would be nice to have a little bit of support and predictability. And so between that and the appeal of living by the water, I eventually signed up. Actually, I almost missed it because I was really trying to make a decision. But yeah, I got in, and the three of us went to boot camp together that summer.
Is the Coast Guard part of like the military, or what we would call like public service here, where it's a combination of like the police, the fire service, the military? Is it in that combination there?
It is. So it's under our Department of Homeland Security.
Okay.
And then it's also connected to the Department of Defense, just because we end up working together so much. So it is nice that, in the Coast Guard, we do get all the defense, like education benefits, and, access to the commissaries, the grocery stores, and everything. So it's a little bit of both.
So the first time I really heard about the Coast Guard and how it was involved with that military connection was, I remember the film in 2006 that came out with Kevin Costner and Ashton Kutcher, The Guardian. And I was like, that's amazing. But the Coast Guards that are associated to the UK are all very charity based. the RNLI. But yeah, like the lifeboats and stuff, it's all really charity, and yeah, sometimes they really struggle with things like just boats and even getting people to be part of the Coast Guard itself, or the RNLI can be quite a struggle, because there's one local to me down here in Exmouth. I live down by the coast, and it's an amazing centre, but it's only been up for about the last 15 years, and I can imagine getting funding for those sort of things, especially in the economy that we're in at the moment. They can struggle quite a lot.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we're the smallest service. Like there are more New York City fire or police officers than there are Coast Guard across the country. So yeah, it's definitely a small service, and we've like transitioned to. We used to be under the Department of Transportation, and then like back in the day, we were doing like prohibition when they banned alcohol, like busting that. So yeah, it has a long history and not clearly under any department for very long.
You talked a little bit about surfing before. Let's have a little talk about that. So you're obviously from California originally. So how did you? In fact, no, you're not, are you? You're not from California originally.
I mean, yeah, I was born inland in California, and then I grew up in the Midwest in Ohio.
Okay,
That
cool.
was my grade school, high school experience. Yeah.
So how did you get into surfing itself?
So we would go on vacation to the East Coast. We go to North Carolina every summer for 2 weeks, and I wanted to do it. And my dad's from San Diego, California, so he got me aboard. He got me and my brother aboard. We went out on the water, and I'd go out and like surf, and then I'd come in and he would give me all his tips and tell me everything I'm doing wrong and like what to fix. So he said he was too old to like surf with me, but he'd watch me when I went out and keep an eye on me. So yeah, I surfed the Outer Banks, which is like there are only big waves when there are hurricanes kind of thing going on. So I was out in like not hurricanes, but some rougher water, not like the smoothest waves or the most predictable waves. But it was great. I had a lot of like anxiety as a kid, and once I started surfing those summers, like that really really put me at peace.
That seems a little bit like talking to you now. You seem like super chilled out, if I'm perfectly honest. You sound really relaxed, and I can't imagine like an uptight kid.
Yeah, it was a lot of internal anxiety. Like, yeah, I grew up in, it was very conservative and like just, just kind of like that stereotypical high school experience that maybe everybody was anxious then, but yeah, I felt it.
Yeah, it's one thing I have a little bit of fear of my daughter, because I've got a daughter and a little boy as well, and she's nearly 10 years old this year, and she has a few little problems at school, like where a lot of the girls that are in her school, they're very like alpha female, so they're always like bouncing off each other, and she has her own ways of thinking. She's very sarcastic, like me and my wife. So they a lot of the other kids don't really understand sarcasm, I don't think, which I don't know is a good thing or the bad thing, I guess. But I do like fear for her a little bit, because you do hear like stories of like bullying and stuff like that, and girls are very different to boys. They're very more what's the word, uh, mentally, as opposed to doing physical things to each other. That so it's going to be an interesting few years, I think, when she gets there.
Yeah. Have you gotten her in the water at all? Is she
Yeah,
surfing?
yeah, she does. She gets very cold very quickly, because here in the UK, the water temperature, even in the summer's not particularly warm. But I've got her into doing jiu-jitsu for the last, well, since she was about 4 years old, so the last 6 years. So that's pretty cool. And I'm just starting my own little academy now as well. So she's going to start helping me train the other kids, which is going to be good. I think she's quite excited about that as well. So it gives us something to focus on too.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think yeah, having just something to get away, I think is important for so many kids. Just even if it's hard at school, like, oh, okay, I get to go to jujitsu every Wednesday, and like that's what I look forward to. So that's really cool.
What are your local breaks that you surf at the moment?
Right now I live right by D Street and Moonlight in Encinitas. So that's my go-to, my favorite. Honestly, like I just when it's just 3 to 4 feet and just like nice and clean, that's when I just go out for an hour in the morning before work and just like have a nice chill morning.
What sort of boards are you riding at the moment? Are you a short boarder? Are you a mid-lengther? Do you like to get on the log every now and again?
I've got a shortboard. I've got like a 6'2", and it's got a lot of buoyancy, which is nice. Because I feel like I can take it out when it's big and still duck dive. I can take it out when it's a little smaller and still catch stuff. And then yeah, I have like a 6'0", but it's super thin. Like when I paddle on that thing, I feel like I'm doing 5 times the amount of work on my 6'2". So yeah.
I've become the type of person that volume is your friend. So I've got a 6'4" and a 7'0". I call the 7'0" my point grinder, purely for the fact that I'd probably never take it out anything above 4 foot because it'd just be a nightmare to duck dive. But I'm a sucker for retro boards, so I've got all my boards are pretty much twin fins or single fins. Um, but yeah, I take those out. I couldn't go back to surfing a shortboard. I don't think, not like a Sharp Eye or a Paizel or something like that. Purely for the fact that I'm just too lazy to put the effort into paddling those things around. If I'm honest.
Yeah, I've got to start switching. Actually, I have like a back injury, and like I think I need to get on a longboard and start doing the knee paddling. Otherwise I'm not going to be able to surf anymore at all in a couple of years. So yeah, I've got to give up my ego and like get on get on something else a little more often.
I'm putting my therapy head on now. What's your back injury?
So I have like disc problems. It's actually from the Coast Guard, just from like it happened the first time, like carrying a lot of heavy stuff and running in the sand. I don't know why we were in the sand, but we were. Um and that was the first time it went out, and it's like a L4, L5 disc, degenerative disc, and every year. So at first I could go a year without anything happening, and then I could go 6 months, and now it's gone out like twice in the last like 3 months. So
So here's
it's
the
like
question: do you do any strengthening exercises for your back, and do you do any stretching?
I do. I mean, I went to our PT or physical therapy. So yeah, I do some strengthening stuff. I mean, I do it daily now. Like I'm like changing my lifestyle now. Um, that I am being forced to. But so yeah, I do the strengthening. I don't know what you think about inversion tables that like flip you. So I have one of those. I try to get on that in the mornings. And yeah, I just try not to be extreme,
I got a
which is hard.
inversion. In fact, it's a really random story. This. So I was listening to a Joe Rogan podcast. This is probably about 5 or 6 years ago, and I was getting some really bad back issues from doing jiu-jitsu, but then surfing as well. So sort of like the anterior pelvic tilt you get from surfing when your head's up and you're arching your back, but then the reverse of that when you're doing jiu-jitsu, like you kind of bend your knees back towards your chest to hold a guard up to stop people coming jumping on top of you basically. And yeah, I was getting some really bad back issues, so I thought I'll look at inversion tables. So I started going onto Google, onto Amazon, and all that sort of thing. And then randomly, I was walking around the camp that I was the unit physical training instructor for, and I went into one of the accommodation buildings, and in the very very bottom where the lockers were, where people that live outside of the camp and they come in, there was just a random inversion table just there, and I was like, oh, I'll give that a go. Stuck my feet in it and turned upside down, and I got stuck. I couldn't get my feet back out. I was upside down for about 5 minutes trying to figure this thing out.
That's my biggest fear. I told a friend that was helping me put together, I was like, if I get stuck, like I'm calling you.
Yeah, they're really
That's
weird
my
contraptions as well.
yeah, it makes sense that if it's pulling your discs apart, like it makes sense that it helps, I guess.
Yeah, but then I started looking into a little bit more of the physical, the anatomy and physiology of the side of things, and realized that I've actually got weaknesses in certain areas of my body, and that's why I was, getting these problems in my lower back. So I just started working on those, and then it just went through a peak and trough of doing it, not doing it, and getting better and not getting better. So I was the my own worst enemy, if I'm honest.
And you had to work.
Nah, I kind of left the inversion table and I went on to some other things. I'm kind of one of those people that likes to go through fads. And right, the inversion table was a fad, and then all of a sudden, doing yoga twice a day was a fad. And yeah, I think we're all like that sometimes. Let's talk a little bit about the Coast Guard training then, because you obviously have to be quite. It's quite physically demanding, and as I talked about before, the Guardian film said that it was. So could you could you just elaborate on that a little bit for me?
Sure. Yeah. So the Ashton Kutchers of the Coast Guard do have their own special training that's very intense swim training. So I did not go through that, but there are we like after your boot camp. So I went to a heavy weather station and was on the boat crew and boarding team out there. So I was in Montauk, New York, which is close to where the Guardian was probably based on. But so yeah, we did the heavy weather training and just like the big seas. I was the boat crew, so me personally, I was not driving the boat, which maybe was scarier because I had no control over how we were maneuvering and just had to trust in whoever was driving it. Um, so that was an adventure, especially, like a lot of the young men and women are, they're like 22, 23, and you're just putting your life in their hands at some point. So um that was cool. I only got seasick at night, and like when it was really foggy out, I almost got seasick. As long as I could see the big waves and like see and like how I was feeling, that didn't bother me. um I don't know, our boot camp was pretty basic, just like getting yelled at a lot, rolling around in the dirt. Um, Nothing. I was actually disappointed. I was hoping, me and my two friends, we were hoping that like we would be like in the ocean a lot, but we had to wait till we get to our first unit to get on the water.
What sort of job role were you doing there?
Uh, in New York, it was a small boat station, so we did like search and rescue a lot. So like the Hamptons, New York, it's like all the rich New Yorkers that have their yachts out there in the summertime. So in the summertime, we were like helping people who didn't know how to drive a boat but had the money to purchase a boat. In the winter, it was actually more serious. So it was like the fishermen who are out there in the winter weather, and might get stalled and like call us as a last resort.
How did you find being a woman in that environment? I talked to a girl the other day. She started doing jiu-jitsu or martial arts, about 20 years ago. And she was finding that she was kind of quite isolated. She was like one of like maybe one or two that were, doing that. And it was quite a male dominated environment. How did you find it?
Yeah, it was definitely male dominated. That first unit was really rough, because the culture was really poor. So there were no, I mean, part of the problem with like not having representation, there were no women in leadership positions. So when like somebody was inappropriate, I didn't really have anybody to like trade notes with, like be like, hey, what should I do if somebody says this, or if somebody's bothering me? Like, what is the line here? I don't want to be that, I don't want to be the woman that's causing the problems, but at the same time, like, you don't want to just let things go. So I didn't have anyone to talk to really, and that was hard. I did. I mean, I did have like a bad situation where, yeah, somebody was really bothering me, and then I left, and then I got a call a couple of years later, and he had like assaulted somebody else at that unit. So it was like the worst of the worst kind of environment. So yeah, that was really tough.
Yeah, I can imagine, especially coming from an environment where I did. It was very much, I went through training and it was kind of like the last of the old school guys. So my experience of going something like that, through recruit training and then passing out the other end, was very much, you do as you're told. If you don't do it the way that I've told you to do it, you're wrong and you're never going to pass anything. So you just constantly shouted that all the time. And even from the point of coming out of the other end of a training environment and then going into a commando unit, it was kind of still that mentality as well. You're the bottom of the ship pile. You're making cups of tea for the guys. Sometimes you're sorting their kit out. You're basically like the bitch of the of that environment. But then it was kind of like the more time that you did, it kind of, there's that hierarchy where you kind of, like, the next new guys come in, and then it kind of like staggers up through that. So um, in a way, I can kind of empathize with that a little bit. And I don't think the environments are like that now because cultures have obviously changed over the years. But I don't know. In one way, it's kind of a character builder because you're socially and mentally having to deal with that. But then on the flip side of it, you can argue that should you have to deal with that in the first place, it should be a nice environment to be able to work in and socialize in.
Yeah, I think I think the time you're in it makes a difference. If you experience it and then you leave. I think one thing in the military is you can get stuck in it. So, for me, if it was 6 months and then I was out, I'd be like, oh, that was terrible. But for like, I was stuck for like 3 years in like a constant state of like trying to protect myself and like trying to live normal life, or like trying to like keep my sanity. Like that's where surfing came in for me, where I would just like, man, as soon as we were out, I was in my wetsuit and I was gone. I was to the beach to just like de-stress.
Did you surf around New York while you were there?
I did, yeah. I surfed year round there. So we would go out and it would be snowing. Um, it was actually, we actually got like some real groundswell because of the angle that the Long Island sticks out from. So it's like like a few places on our East Coast that you get real swell and like predictable sets.
Yeah, I've seen New Jersey absolutely firing sometimes. A friend of mine actually, who I did a podcast with, he wrote a bunch of novels called Tom Anderson, and he writes extensively about surfing in Jersey. And but it's kind of very similar to like us because the New York sort of like line around the globe is pretty much level with the UK as well. So the swells that you would have got round about that time, would have been pumping over to us. The only thing that we've got different is we've got a continental shelf that sometimes blocks the major swells coming into the country, which I don't think a lot of people see. And that's why when you see in Europe, you see these massive waves coming through, but they don't really hit us that much. But that must have been pretty cool. I've been to New York a couple of times actually because I'd like to surf there eventually one day, but depends whether I get back there or not.
Yeah, it's a cool spot. It's got like a good summer scene too.
When did you eventually go back over to the West Coast then?
It took me a while to get back to the West Coast. So I was in my first unit was New York, then I did training in Virginia, and then the last unit I was at was in Key West, Florida. Um, and then after that, I went and worked for the government in Washington, D.C. for 5 years. And then I finally came back out to see, just left that job and was just like, I need my sanity. I need to surf again, and came back out here for school and to work at the university.
Let's talk a little bit about working for the government as well. So were you an analyst for the CIA? Is that correct?
Yeah, I was a targeting analyst for them.
So how does somebody working for the Coast Guard end up doing a job like that? Did you get approached by it, or did you apply for it?
I applied for it. So my Coast Guard school, like after I was done with the heavy weather station, I went to their Coast Guard Intel school. And my next unit was an Intel task force in Key West. So we had all the military branches and most of our Intel agencies all under one roof in that task force. So we did counter drugs stuff in the Caribbean. There's some UK ships out in the Caribbean too. We did like operations with. So that set me up. I had like some intel training. I had like the security clearance, and then also just talking to the civilians that worked at that task force was really, I felt like really lucky to connect with them. And I got to talk to people in the FBI and like talk to people in all these other organizations and start thinking about what would be next for me and what was interesting, what cultures what cultures within the intel community might be a good fit.
It's quite strange because I was looking at this when I was doing a little bit of research on you, and I've thought it quite a lot. Is that within the military or the US, you've got a lot of these sub branches of enforcement, like the FBI, the CIA, the Secret Service, the DEA, and then there's all the other little ones that come with the police as well. And I could never figure out who's got, you watch the films about jurisdiction and stuff like that, and I'm like, I don't even know how would it even work? Like, you literally, it's a bit of a crazy environment to have all these different people doing, very similar jobs.
It is, and that's where the task force helped, where we had like, it was like, okay, finally, like one representative from every agency, like let's get on the same page and like let's not, you know be on the same op or be recruiting the same person for different agencies. So yeah, things like those, the task forces are so useful then when you're isolated in your one CIA or FBI building and like trying to figure out who to call at the other agency. It can definitely be challenging.
Did you have to go through any formal training to do that job, or was it just a case of because you were doing an analyst job with the Coast Guard, you kind of just slipped straight into it?
Yeah, I went through training once I got into the CIA. So I did a couple different trainings. I did their analyst career training, which is a certain amount of time. Actually I don't know how much I can say about that, but it was about thinking through all kinds of different content, like uh things you're going to come across. So some of it was like very geopolitical, some of it was counterterrorism. So it was, then at the end there's like a crisis where you're doing analysis in a limited amount of time and trying to write things up and pass it on. So yeah, they tried to expose you to a lot of different scenarios you might run into and just push you to work harder and more quickly under stress.
Did you enjoy doing it?
Yeah, I loved it. Yeah, I loved the analyst. I loved like, when everyone goes through like a similar training, like you kind of you connect with people and you're on the same team, through a crisis. So yeah, it was really satisfying and like just a good group of people to work with.
What was the point where you kind of decided that you'd had enough of doing all of this? Because you mentioned you went from there and then you went back over to the West Coast. I can't imagine being in an environment where I haven't been by the ocean because, surfing. I mean, I've been surfing now for what, 26, 27 years, and it's always been my mental outlet. I've only just come to realize that maybe in the last 5 to 6 years. It's been my passion for a very, very long time, since I was 14 years old. So not being by the sea, and you can definitely tell when I haven't been in the ocean because, hence the title of the podcast, I become very grumpy and antisocial and probably more sarcastic than I usually am. Did you find yourself falling into that little rat hole?
Yeah, I think that happened and I didn't realize it. Like I definitely every year, every New Year's, I would go on a surf trip, and that was like my cleanse was to just take 2 weeks in the winter and New Year's and just be out of the country, be by the water. Um, I don't know when I realized that wasn't enough. I think, I took a vacation. I took a trip out, actually, not even to surf, but just to the mountains out west, and went on like a long hike by myself, and like realized like, wow, like I need to be in nature. Not even just surfing, but like I can't be in the city. I can't be in a vaulted building, for 8 hours a day. So I think like just taking those trips and realizing, I was super lucky to be able to take those trips, but I was really losing like myself. I was losing like my soul almost. It's like once I started surfing, I was like, oh wait, who is that person who's sitting in traffic and like, just not very happy with anything.
Where were your go-to locations where you went abroad surfing?
I went to Nicaragua, which was super cool. Um, that was great. That was like a women's surf retreat. So it was all women, and it was just, yeah, it was a great little retreat. And then Barbados, that was great. Like the east coast of Barbados is on the Atlantic, so that got some waves. Um, Went to Puerto Rico a little bit. That was nice to be in the warm waters. And I made it out to Hawaii once too.
Surf any of the big breaks there, or did you just kind of do what I did? Go,
You
yeah,
know,
I'm going to surf pipe at 2 to 3 foot and say I've done it.
yeah, my claim to fame is I did surf pipeline, but it was in August, so it was just like 3, 4, 5 feet. No one else was out there, really, just a couple people. But I did. I can say I surfed pipeline.
You ever thought about going down to Mexico?
Oh yeah, actually, yeah. Now that I'm in San Diego, I go to Mexico all the time. We can drive over. So yeah, I found a really great, like just nice, slow, mellow break down there, and took a bunch of friends down there for New Year's. So yeah, Mexico is a great, great getaway as well.
Are you not one of these pesty surf fanatics like I am, where you watch all the WSL events that come on all the time?
When I can catch them, yeah, if I can stream something or like catch it on YouTube later, I'll have that on in the background when I'm at home for sure.
Well, I was sat at home. Well, it's 2 o'clock in the morning here. Where it's 6 in the evening for you at the moment, and round about your time yesterday evening, go back in time. I didn't even realise that the Mio Portugal Pro was on, and I turned it on. I was like, "How am I missing this?" Because I always stick it on in the background, whether it's doing the kids' dinner or. To be fair, the majority of the events are like late evening or like through the night, especially like in Hawaii, because Pacific Standard Time's what, 8 hours behind, or I don't know. Is Hawaii time a little bit further? Yeah, so
A
the
little further.
evening's normally the morning, isn't it? So yeah, I always love watching those events. Some people think I'm a bit mental just watching somebody surfing for, you know, 8, 9 hours straight, but I enjoy it.
Yeah, we did. We watched this New Year's. My friends binged on all the surf documentaries we could find. So we watched like the Garrett McNamara documentary, And like then we were like, we felt so bad for Cotty because he never won in that documentary. And then I saw he was just on the big waves like a week ago in Portugal, and we're like, come on, Cotty, you got it. So like it's super fun to connect with like their stories too and where they're at.
I was trying to tap him up because I'm going out to Portugal next week, so I thought I might, catch the last couple of days of the WSL event, but I think it's going to be finished by the time I get there. But there's some massive swell coming through there to Nazaré next in the next couple of weeks, which I don't think it bodes too well for me because a lot of the breaks down there are facing to the west. So I'm sure I'll find some sheltered spots. But yeah, I was trying to tap Cotty up to see if he was going to be about because he's. I went to one of the lads that I took through recruit training. Cotty was his best man, and that's kind of like how I met him. It's all very strange. All the community in the UK is very like a small, close knit of people because there's not that many people really. But it is a super nice guy, and you wouldn't, if you met him in the street, you wouldn't expect him to be doing things like that. It's a bit nuts, really.
Yeah, he seemed really low key.
I kind of mega big time myself then throwing out an Andrew Cotton big name out there, didn't I? I was like, oh, well, superstar. You wrote a book called Fairly Smooth Operator, My Life Occasionally at the Tip of the Spear. What inspired you to do that?
I started taking some stand-up comedy classes through the Armed Service Arts Partnership, which is like a nonprofit that puts on arts classes for veterans. And so I put together like a 5-minute comedy set with them, and then like realized there was more to those jokes and more behind the jokes that I wanted to tell. And so I started writing out like the full story for each of those punchlines and those jokes, and then just kept writing. I think I was in Ecuador actually on a surf trip, and like we'd surf and then I'd go back and write at the hostel, and just that was it, surfing and writing. And it was really cool to process too everything that I'd been through. And then also having it published and then reading it again and being like, and just reprocessing and seeing how things connect has been really fascinating too.
How did you find the whole experience of writing your memoirs down?
It was great to write it, and I was super nervous about publishing it. Like at the last minute, I almost just pulled out and was like, I don't know if I want everyone to read everything. Um, but then I just went through it anyways, and I've gotten some really good feedback. And it's a woman's story about the military and the CIA, which is unique. So I've actually I'm so thankful for the feedback that made me feel like, okay, like this isn't just me being vulnerable. This is helpful for other women to know that other people have gone through similar experiences.
Did you feel like you almost subconsciously had to put it out because of the experiences that you'd been through, and you felt like you could share that, or was it just something you kind of went, nah, I'll write it, never really written anything before like that, let's just see where it goes?
Yeah, I think it was more see where it goes. And I really like using humor to communicate. I mean, I think it's like sarcasm where like sometimes it's just an easier thing to hear than the truth. So or like the straight, cold, hard truth. So yeah, I really like writing in a comedic style. So I was like, let me see what are some other stories. And once I thought of one story, then I'm like, oh yeah, and then that happened. So actually writing made me remember more stuff that I'd experienced and that affected me, but wasn't in like my immediate conscious memory. So that was pretty cool.
Did you have any advice on writing a book, or did you just kind of just write your experiences down through doing the comedy, and then just kind of pulled it all together?
Yeah, the comedy definitely helped me shape it. And then I worked with an editor once I had like a lot of stuff down, and he helped me point out like some of the style that was working, some of the things that maybe weren't working. And then I went back and wrote for another 6 months after getting the feedback from the editor. But yeah, I also I use my analysis style where like I just like tell me what's important, like don't tell me a bunch of descriptions, like what kind of boat it was, and like all the, you know, like put me in the location and then like tell me the story. So it's like a very like quick read. It's like written the way I would want to read something.
I read a Jerry Lopez book a few years ago. It's actually still sat on the shelf upstairs in my bedroom, and it wasn't really like an autobiography of his life. It was like a bunch of stories that he'd experienced over like his lifetime, and he just pulled the most prolific ones out of there and put them together in, you know, in words, and put them into a book. And I think sometimes having having that kind of style is a little bit different than, you know, I was born on this such and such a date, and I did this at school, and I did this, because sometimes, you know, an autobiography can get quite laborious and predictable as well, because people have their own lives. And okay, yeah, there might be some horrific things that maybe have shaped them at a young age, but it generally follows the same sort of, you know, the same sort of like storyline all the way through. Shaking something up like you have has probably done the book a little bit more good than, you know, just writing War and Peace, really. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I think so. And I think some of the feedback I got from just one person was a little more critical. And at one point, it, you know, like, I don't know, I like take criticism hard, but, or I like really like want to incorporate it, you know, like I'm an analyst, like tell me what's wrong and I'll fix it, you know. And then the comment was like, oh, I felt like it was jumpy. And I was like, okay, let me think about this. And I was like, you know what, it's jumpy because my life was jumpy. So the first chapter is boot camp. The second chapter, or no, the first chapter is like a little bit about college, which setting up like the recruiter and how I got into the Coast Guard. And then the second chapter is boot camp. And it's like, well, you went college to boot camp. How did you? And I was like, well, that's what happened in my life. One minute I was in college, the next minute I'm in like this crazy boot camp. So I think it represented like how I felt in the whole process, which was like just being in one place and then just being pulled away, and now I'm in this other place. So I think it kind of reflects the life there, getting moved around all the time.
Well, not necessarily that. It's also your memory as well, though, isn't it? Because, you know, you don't, when you go back and you think about the past, you don't think about, you know, when you were like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years old. You never really remember those sort of things. And, you know, with your mind being the way it is, with your long term and short term memory, all the little bits of things that probably were quite important during those age times are not so important, so you kind of forget them about them. So if you think about it, really your brain, or the way that your memory works, is in big blocks anyway, and the things that you remember the most or come to your mind first when you're thinking about them is probably how you set that out, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, I've gotten other good feedback, and you know, made people can make sense of it. And I think some of it's jumpy too, because I can't talk about everything, you know, in my job. So I'm like, sorry, that might not be in the right order, but I'm just gonna have to accept that because I can't like write all the details in. So
Let's talk a little bit about comedy. So you said that you did an apprenticeship with the Armed Services Arts Partnership. No, wrong. Yeah, it was the Armed Services Arts Partnership Comedy Boot Camp. How did that come about, and how did you get into it?
you know, I don't remember exactly how I found out about them. I think I was living in DC and I would walk to Georgetown, like a little area with shops and everything. And I think it must have been like one of their flyers or events. They had an open mic night at one of the bakeries. And I was like, you know what? I watched a comedy show like a few weeks ago and just really connected with it, and I was like, I could do something like that. And so I wrote out just, you know, something I thought was funny, and I went to the open mic and I did it, and it was just like a great community. People were really nice, and like um whoever was there representing the organization was like, you should sign up for a class, like you might want the storytelling. And I was like, no, I want to do comedy. um and then so I signed up, and they do an 8-week comedy classes like once a week. And man, it was just such a good time. It was so fun and such a good community.
How did you find getting up on stage to try and make people laugh?
That was nerve-wracking. Like, yeah, the last thing you do is they put together an event for you. So you're on stage with the bright lights and the crowd. So yeah, I was super nervous, but like you practice so much. Like I practiced so much. I thought I had said a joke wrong, but like I mean, I guess it's like your military training, like you're so rehearsed, even if you blacked out, it's just, you're going to go through the motions. So I felt like I was so prepared. Like I just said it and I did it. And like, that was it. Like, and then once I started doing it a little bit more, I could be conscious and actually like be on my feet and be a little more, like not improvise, but like be a little more, in tune with the audience's reactions.
I take it you didn't feel that was going to be another career path for you then?
I'm teaching classes for ASAP. I'm too nervous. Like I'm too nervous. I'm an artist in other ways. Like I paint and I write, but like I'm too nervous to put rent's pretty expensive in California. So like I've chosen it to be like a hobby that I'll fit in as much as possible.
How have you found art help you with the background activities that you've been doing? Because I've had a look at some of your drawings or your art on through Instagram, because you've got a couple of Instagram pages there, and I think you've got your own website set up as well to sell paintings as well. Have you always been artistically minded, and or is it just something that you wanted to do, now you're at this part in your life?
Yeah, I've always been into art. Like I was in the art club in high school, and then for my undergrad work, I took as many art classes as I could, just because I just enjoyed it so much. Um, and then yeah, when I was in the Coast Guard at that unit, that was really tough. After I would surf, I would go buy a canvas, and it would be winter, and I would just I would just paint. I was out there like by myself in Montauk. So yeah, it was kind of like another outlet for me. And just, sometimes I start a painting and I think it's going to be one thing, and then I just completely change it. So it's also just like a big problem solving project for me that just puts me in the moment. So I love that.
Yeah, I kind of go searching every now and again for like surf art and ocean art and stuff, and there is some really cool bits out there, and I've had a little look at yours, and especially like your surfing art, is quite picturesque, and I always thought that trying to draw a wave, something that is continuously moving and at the molecular level as well, nothing ever really looks the same. Sometimes that can be quite difficult to grasp, let alone put down onto paper. I mean, how do you find that drawing water itself?
Yeah, I thought water's, yeah, like you said, it's so challenging. And I can see when I look way back at my art from like 2010, and I can see how it's evolved since then, and how actually just looking at how I would draw waves has like changed over time. Um, so I think, yeah, you can, like, I've tried to do like realistic, and then sometimes it's like more cartoony, and then right now I'm kind of in just more of like an abstract representation of like how it feels to be in the water almost. But yeah, it's one of the most challenging things, and it's so interesting to see how different people like put it onto paper.
Have you got any good swell running at the moment?
It was kind of onshore winds this morning. But yeah, I think we should have some good stuff next week. I was kind of still recovering this week from some injuries, so I missed our swell this week. But yeah, I'm looking forward to getting my morning sections back going again.
Are you able to do that? Get into the water before going to work and after work, or are you more of a weekend warrior?
I have turned into a bit of a weekend warrior, but I am going to try to fit in. Like, I think Wednesday is going to be my morning surf day, where I just if it's decent, I get in, and like if I'm a little late to work, that's okay. I'll just stay late. And then yeah, the sun sets so early right now, but once I think summertime, I'll switch to like some evening sessions and like stop on the way home.
Have you got a good crew of people that you go surfing with, or are you like me and you just end up going on your own most of the time anyway?
Yeah, I go on my own during the week, but I've been so lucky. I have a lovely group of lady friends. And actually I found another Coast Guard person. We had gone surfing like 4 or 5 times before we both mentioned that we were in the Coast Guard. So she's great. She's connected me with some other surfers around the area. So we've got a pretty good crew, like a weekend crew, which is really nice.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I've for years because I grew up in the Midlands of the UK, um, around the Birmingham area. So when I eventually joined the military, there weren't really that many people that surfed, and especially when I was like a teenager as well. Everybody was into like football and the mainstream sports. Football, rugby. I played those sort of things, but I was never really into them. So I had like pictures of Kelly Slater and Rob Machado and Luke Egan and people like that all over my school folders, as you do. And people were like that. Who are they? And it was just something personal to me, really. Uh, and as I've gone through sort of like my adult life, it's been quite difficult to find people to go with. So like I said, at the start of this, it is almost become sort of like my outlet and my meditating sort of thing that I do. I do have 2 or 3 people locally around here that I know, but it's one of those things where life gets in the way. They've got their own families and stuff, and trying to tie those guys together to get away sometimes can be quite difficult. But when it is, it's pretty cool. So I can't say that I have like a massive crew of people that I go with, but at least having a couple of people to share some waves with is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's nice. Yeah, even just I like just sometimes going to the same break, and even if I don't know the people, I see the same people, and it feels like we're in a little crew. But yeah, life definitely, I feel like, yeah, every year, somebody gets married or has a kid, and suddenly we're like, oh, it's a little harder to get in the water at the same time. So yeah, I totally understand that.
Well, Caroline, we've been going for about an hour now, so I'm going to tie this up with a quick fire round about surfing, believe it or not. So, the first question is, if you had one surfboard fin setup for the rest of your life, would it be twin fin, thruster, single fin, quad, bonza, or finless?
Oh my gosh, I don't know fins. I'll say thruster because that sounds cool.
Your favorite surf wax?
I'm a sucker for sticky bumps.
Good choice. I like sticky bumps too. Your favorite surfer and why?
Ooh, I love Paige Alms. She does the big wave surfing because she's just super humble, and she found her own path to the big waves. She kind of navigated out of the competitions and the, quick cutting stuff, and like just found her own spot in the surf world. And I thought that was really cool.
The best and the worst person to share a lineup with?
Oh no. Okay. The best is when it's like your friends and everybody's just like, when it's just the party wave, where it's just like a Sunday morning and you're the only ones out there, and it's just like, let's all just go. Um, the worst person to share a wave with, I mean, just the person that takes a wave, then gets out, then takes a wave, that, like take a break, let someone else get a wave. That's how I feel.
And the last question is, if you had one surf spot to surf for the rest of your life, what would that be? Or where would that be?
One surf spot. I really like my little spot, not my little spot. It's on Surfline, but this spot in Mexico that is more of a local spot. It's a slow longboarder kind of spot, and I would surf that every day if I could.
Caroline Walsh, thank you very much for joining me on the podcast today, and I've appreciated your stories.
Thanks so much for having me. This has been fun.
And that's it. If you like the podcast, please like, share, and subscribe on your podcast provider, and leave me a little review on Apple Podcasts. Thanks for listening.